Hello and welcome everybody today to meet and greet for Deer Lakes Lancer Academy. My name is Mike River and I've been with Deer Lakes School District now for 21 years, and I've been running Lancer Academy since 2011. So if you ever need to get a hold of me, make sure you look on the website for my email address. It's right there. But just to give you a little background, Deer Lakes and Waterfront Learning work in partnership with each other to offer online courses for full or part-time basis. Students and parents will work with the school counselor initially to pick out courses, and then those counselors right there will actually enter those courses and kind of get the enrollment process started. And my role in this is if there's any bumps in the road that you parents have during this process, you contact me. My official title is the District Liaison, and I'm here to work on your behalf to work out any issues that you may have. And please don't hesitate to email me. In fact, it's the best way to get a hold of me is through email. Phone's a little difficult because I also teach physics and robotics here at the high school, so most of the time I have students in my room and I cannot answer the phone and I cannot actually listen to voicemails. So please email me if you have any concerns. It's the best way to get a hold of me. So in terms of Waterfront Learning, the students will be registered through their student information system. Their student information system is called Genius. Here at Deer Lakes, we have an information system for students called Skyward. Those two systems do not speak to each other electronically. So you will be utilizing the Genius student information system for the 99% of the time your students enrolled in Deer Lakes Lancer Academy. So after a counselor from Deer Lakes enters the students' courses and all the documents are submitted from the Deer Lakes Special Education Department if needed, the Waterfront Learning team usually only takes 1 or 2 days to get those courses enrolled and get your students started. Now obviously if that happens on a Friday, you might have to wait a couple days because they're not working on Saturday or Sunday, so please make note that's business days. Once the student, once that's all completed, the student, the parents, and I, the counselor will all get emails notifying you that the course registration has begun. And once you get those course registrations, your child is able to start immediately. It allows them to be able to aggregate data in their student information system. And so they need those in there as placeholders. But because they put it in there, it does automatically generate an email to parents. But please don't worry about it. Your student doesn't have to do anything in there in terms of So once you're in, your student's logged in and everything's going, your student will have a teacher, and typically for every course, and or an advisor, and they will communicate with your student. Hopefully they're communicating with the parents too when needed, and they're going to outline the expectations for the course. That teacher and or advisor will maintain contact and provide instructional support throughout the enrollment process. It's not a Deer Lakes teacher. Okay? It's a PA certified teacher that is employed by the Allegheny Intermediate Unit, and they provide support. Every course will have a teacher, and they're responsible for getting back to any questions within 24 hours. So if there's an immediate need, reach out to them and see. Typically typically they're pretty responsive because they do like to stay in contact with everybody. Now, after you've done all your work and the course is complete, a report will be generated, and you'll get another email for that, and it'll actually have the grade on there. And I get all this, just so you know, every email that you guys get, I get them too. So multiply yours by 70, and that's my inbox every day. So I see all communication, and actually you can go in and see more detail as well. So that leads me to this one. We're going to talk about monitoring. Let's go down to this bottom one first, since I brought it up. All of these emails can sometimes become background noise. And I know from personal experience, when I check my personal email, 9 times out of 10 it's junk. So we've eliminated Deer Lake sending additional progress reports out every week, because from feedback we've gotten past years, it just was too much. So we require the parent participation in this process. We want you to monitor their progress. It doesn't mean we're not looking at it. I can see it. But we want the parent to be able to get in there every day and look at what their son or daughter is doing. You know, and the analogy I use, it's like this. If you want to know how fast you're driving, you look at your speedometer. That's all you got to do, look at your speedometer. You don't need to call the police to say, hey, how fast am I driving? That's kind of what it's like. You don't need to call us and say, hey, how's my son or daughter doing? You have instant access to everything. And I suggest that you use their login credentials. If you want, you can create a Guardian account through the Genius information system. But to me, that's just an extra layer. You should have their access. You have their code. It was sent to you. Use it. Go on there, look at their grades, look at what they're doing every day. If they're not logging in, it's very easy to see. There's an activity button there, and it will give you down to the minute of how much time they've spent on math or English. So it's the information is there for you. But hopefully you are monitoring your students' progress. It doesn't mean that we're not looking at it too. I get on there and check everybody, usually a couple times a week, just to make sure I don't see something that's going wrong, or some of the student going in the wrong direction. But we get notified, and we'll get to that in a second. But the expectation is that all the parents create a Guardian account or use your students' login and consistently access their account to monitor their progress. Okay. And that's really one of the, part of one of these pillars of success I have outlined here. And that goes with the communication part, number 5. But here's 5 things in no particular order that I think are important for the success of your student. Is 1, get the orientation completed. Hopefully by now, if you logged in, you've already completed the orientation. That orientation shows you exactly what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, how to manage your way through the learning management system. And you can always go back to that if you have any questions. You can go back and look at that again. I'm going to get to attendance in a minute, but let's skip the pacing. Pacing, what pacing is referring to is if you have 48 assignments to do in a 9-week period. A 9-week period, there's usually only about 40 to 45 school days. That means some days you might have to do more than one assignment. And that's okay. That doesn't mean you're doing 2 days worth of work. It just means that sometimes assignments can be done faster than other assignments. So make sure you're maintaining a consistent pace. If you fall behind, you still have to do all 48 of those assignments, except now you have less days to do it. So make sure your student is always on top of that and looking, because you don't want them to get behind. And when you actually, to me, if you maintain your pacing, your performance usually goes hand in hand with that. If you're waiting to the last minute to do something and you're trying to do 7 assignments in one day, your performance usually suffers. So let's talk about attendance. This is an asynchronous delivery system, which means that the instruction is not a set time. You don't have to show up every day at 8 a.m. and complete your work. It's whenever you choose to log in, which is great for a lot of people, but for some people, it's not a routine. And so if your child needs a routine, try to establish that routine in the first week or so. And once you get that routine established, typically that student has a lot of success, excuse me, a lot of success in the online format, where students can find themselves getting into some difficulty is when they blow it off and they're watching Dr. Phil instead of doing their online work. And next thing you know, there's only 3 days left until the end of the marking period, and they have 40 assignments to do in 3 classes. And then they're panicked. It's the parent's responsibility to get in there and look and say, hey, you're not doing it. And ultimately, you can't even make your child push the button. We can't make your child push the button. The child has to do it themselves. So we're here to support you, and you're there to support your son or daughter. And so we're all a team to allow them to be as successful as they can in this learning environment we have. So communication is important. Your online teachers will be communicating with you all week long. And if they call you, please answer the phone. Okay? Don't blow them off. Pick it up. You'd be surprised at how much easier it is to pick that phone call up and take it and talk to them for a few minutes. You can avoid a lot of situations that may pop up. Or if they email you, whatever form of communication you prefer, respond to their emails. Do not let it go by. They need to know how you're doing. They're your first advocate. Your online teacher is the person you should be in contact with the most. If something is wrong with that relationship between you and your online teacher, your advisor that you have would be the second person that you get in contact with. And if there's a problem there, then usually you'll be emailing me. So if you don't have my email, it's, you can look it up on the district website, but it's just mbriver@deerlakes.net. So let's get back to the attendance portion. We're not looking to specifically see, did you attend every day at a certain time? What we're looking at there is patterns. The suggested amount of time is about an hour per course per day. And that can vary. If you're done quicker, it's going to be less than an hour. If it takes you a little longer, it might be more than an hour. And that's all dependent on the student and the particular assignment. But if you can think of it as, okay, well, my kid only did 15 minutes today and he did 7 subjects, there's something wrong. Okay? And if I see that over an extended period of time, you might get an email or a call that says, hey, is everything okay? From that respect. Now, having gone over these, there's the intervention part. And there's a tiered system. There's 3 tiers to our intervention system here. Everybody starts on tier 1. So if you see that on your child's dashboard, That's okay. Everybody's a tier 1. That just means everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. And everything's normal. Where things start to go wrong is on tier 2. So in tier 2, the student's not meeting the minimum expectations or the pillars of success. And in this case, then they're moved to tier 2. Applications go out to the family and the district and the student. And you're put on what's called the watch list. And so that's where I watch a little bit more closely. And in some cases I'll call or intervene myself right at that point. But at that point, the student will need to work with their assigned advisor, their teacher, or the coach, whatever you want to call them, and have a plan to get back on track. And that kind of goes back to pacing. Once they're back on track, the student can be removed from the watch list and go back to tier 1. If things go wrong from there, you end up in tier 3. Tier 3 is where students have shown little or no improvement after being placed on the watch list. And they're at some sort of risk for not earning a credit for that course. And in tier 3, what happens is we're all notified, again, the same thing, but in this case, a meeting will be required. It used to be you had to come to the district. Now we might have to do Zoom or Google Meet or something like that, but typically we all come together to try to intervene on the student's behalf to get them going in the right direction. And hopefully, after we get a plan in place as a result of that meeting, the student will follow that plan and we can start to back off the intervention, go down to tier 2, and then hopefully back to tier 1. Okay. Now, grading and attendance, we kind of talked about the attendance portion already. Deer Lakes assigns credits earned, not Waterfront Learning. Your student will have a grade from Waterfront. That gets reported to us, but it's our job to assign them. And that's where we take that grade and we put it into our management system called Skyward. And that only happens after the course is completed. So that's why if you were to look on Skyward right now, it would be pretty much empty for your student. But once we get that information at the end of the quarter, the market period, we put the grade in, and then now they have credit for that course. So Waterfront has nothing to do with graduation requirements. Those are all Deer Lakes requirements. So everything we do here, that's why you're in contact with your counselors. We're always making sure that your student is on track to graduate. Now, I think this is one of the most important parts of this meet and greet today, and that's when you're checking your students' grades. When you look at your grade on Genius, there's 2 ways to view it. But there's only one grade that counts in the end. The grade shown is usually a grade of what the student has completed to that point. So for example, if they've done one assignment today, they get 100%. That's all they've done all semester. It will show 100%. 3 weeks from now, if they've done nothing and they've missed 9 other assignments, it'll still show 100%. But their actual grade is 10% at that point because they're missing 9 assignments. Those 9 assignments do not become zeros until the end of the grading period. And so hopefully you can have a discussion with your student that, hey, just because it says 100% doesn't mean you can stop working right now. What that means is you got 100% on what you've turned in. You still have to complete everything else. So just be careful that unfinished work isn't in the grade at that point. When the grading period ends, all unfinished work is counted as 0, and this can be greatly different than the grade that the student was looking at all semester. And we've had this time and time again. I had 80%, I had 80%. You had 80% on 4 assignments, but you were supposed to do 48 assignments. So there was 44 assignments you got zeros on. Okay? Please, if you hear anything today, listen to that. Check your students' progress. Okay? So their attendance is monitored and logged daily electronically. I can see if they've been working or not. You can too if you log in as them. But if they come in and say, no, I worked 7 days this past week, and I did 2 hours of work in math on Monday. I can look at Monday and I said, well, it only shows that you worked for 3 minutes. They can't just open the screen and walk away and think the timer's ticking. It knows if you're actually working or not. I don't know how it does it, but it somehow monitors whether they're interacting with the computer or not. So there's some mechanism there that allows them to track the attendance in every course down to the minute. So here's a little snapshot of, it's actually called the academic snapshot. If you log in on your student's Genius account, you'll see a little box. I have some of this cut off so you don't see the private information of the student. But you can see there's a grade, there's assignments and pacing. And if you look at the first grade, it says 73%. So that student did 3 out of 47 assignments and they're ahead. And they got 73% on what they're working on. The second course there, they have 100%. They did 1 assignment and they got 100% on it. They're on pace. Now if you go down to the fourth one, it has 0 out of 48. So this student is technically behind in those 3 courses. And that's where it'll show you. This is meant for you to just look quickly and get a good idea, a snapshot. But it's not 100% up to date at that moment. It's not instantaneous. If you want instantaneous progress, you have to log into their learning management system, whether it's Edison or Edgenuity. And when you go into Edison, you can go to their grade report, their grading mechanism, and you can see exactly what they have done up to the minute. So when you look at their academic snapshot, this just gives you a good idea of where they're at. If you see a lot of behind on that pacing list, and it's every day, then you might want to have a talk with them. Okay? If you're on pace, great. But the other key thing to look at is if November 2nd is the end of the first marking period. If this is October 28th and there's 3 out of 47 assignments done, that's when you say to your son or daughter, hey, there's something wrong here. We need to get things moving in the right direction. And hopefully by then they would have been placed on tier 2 or tier 3, and we would have been intervening at some point in that process. All right, so that's all I have in terms of the presentation portion. And now we can take questions. If anybody has questions, if you just want to meet and talk, great. We have Lindsay McCackey here. She's the special ed director for Deer Lakes. She can answer questions. Do you have any special ed questions?
So to answer the question about students who may be receiving special education services and what that means if they're attending Lancer Academy, we follow the process that the Waterfront Learning requires us to. So all of our special education teachers or your speech therapists are notified that the child has chosen Lancer Academy. From there, they're in touch with the families, and there is an IEP revision, and then they will also send you a NORA, which is a Notice of Recommended Educational Placement, which then goes on to say that the child will be participating in Lancer Academy. The teacher also then completes the modification form that the Waterfront Learning requires be completed, so they know if they need to make any accommodations to the courses. Those documents are then sent over to Waterfront so they have them on record, and can support if needed and make any accommodations to the classes. If your child receives services like speech and language therapy or occupational therapy, those therapists will also be in contact, if they have not yet, to schedule those sessions. We're offering those remotely, but if you do have a need or want to ask for in-person services for that, that is also an option you can discuss with a therapist at that time. If you haven't heard from or you do have questions, I would suggest that you first start by talking to your special education teacher, and if you have any further questions, then reach out to the special education department.
And thank you, and I'll add that it's Waterfront Learning that requires us to provide that extra paperwork. It's not a district mandate, but it's something that the district has to follow to be able to get the student enrolled. And so if you have a student that has an IEP, please make sure you're in contact with special ed department, their special ed teacher, to check on any of that progress. But that's not our mandate, that's Waterfront Learning's mandate.
Are the classes set up that you can start one class and complete it before starting another one, or do you have to do each one of them, on a given day?
So that's a good question, and thank you. For those of you who couldn't hear the question is, can a student work in one class and get it all done and then start the other courses? And the answer is yes. And some students do that and are successful. Some students try it but are not. What I would suggest that if you are going to do that, you need to be in contact with the teachers closely to let them know. I'm not slacking, I'm just working on math and not English right now. Which English I would do first. If they're going to do that, English requires a lot of writing and other things. So if your student is going to go that route, they're probably going to need a little extra monitoring courses, or 6 courses. That doesn't leave much time for the end of the semester.
I just didn't know if it would trigger and then they would drop to tier 2 and tier 3. And
yeah, it will. It will trigger that if, unless they've communicated with somebody, their advisor, and their teachers. That's the first email should go out to them, and then actually they can put me on that email as well and say, hey, I'm going to do this. This is my plan. And my response 100% of the time will be, okay, but be careful. I don't like that, but if that's what you choose, that's up to you. Any other questions? Yes.
She started doing summer classes, and it was just today, right? She was in the middle of an assignment and clicked the wrong button to submit the assignment that she wasn't finished with. And she doesn't know how to reopen the assignment to finish it.
Okay, you should be able to go right back through this, do the same steps. If it's in Edison. Sure. The question was, what happens if the student inadvertently closes out their assignment while they're working on it? What do you do next? From my understanding and from years past, the information is still there. It's just a matter of getting to it. And so there should be a box or how you got to that assignment should still be there. You just got to retrace your steps. And when you get to that point, it should pop back open, and whatever work you've done should still be there. Knowing computers and how sometimes there's glitches and things can be finicky, that may not always be 100%. But for the most part, their information still should be there, kind of slate. It's like saving in the cloud as you're typing, because it's all web-based.
We'll just have it right before we get here, so we
No.
can look back into it very much, but
Well, after, I can always look at the situation, give you a hand here after we conclude today. Anything else, anybody? the school issues, but you're more than welcome to use your personal computer or something else with, you know. And I'm not sure, Chris may be able to answer this question. Can they plug in external monitor into a Chromebook to make it bigger? I don't know if Chris is in here or not. I don't know. But
Well, we have a family laptop, that's it, and it's just hard to get that to her.
right. Yeah, that's unfortunately that's all we got.
I believe that if you check this out of your Chromebook, you may have an HDMI port on some of them, and you can plug it right into a TV, and you'll be able to look right on the TV.
Yep, so there you go. Thanks, Brian. That would be a great, probably, then it might be too big. 65 inch. Thank you for that question. So, anybody else? Well, thank you guys for coming. And again, if you need me, please email me. If you have questions, don't hesitate. Okay, just shoot an email out there and we'll get back to you. But thanks